In December 1989, the Convention on the Abolition of the Death Penalty was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly and published in July 1991. However, there are still quite a few countries where the death penalty still exists, and executions are actually taking place these days in the United States and China. Even in countries that have abolished the death penalty, there are many opinions that the death penalty should be executed for heinous crimes that are constantly occurring. At one time, when the death penalty was carried out, it was executed by hanging in general criminal law except for the military criminal law. However, besides hanging, there have been various methods of capital punishment historically and worldwide. What was the method of capital punishment that frightened criminals? Let's take a look at the 10 most brutal and unique execution methods from past to present. Start now. 10th place. Drug injection type. The drug injection became known as 30 states in the United States used it as a method of execution. First, an anesthetic called midazolam is injected into the condemned prisoner to put him into a coma. Then, vecuronium bromide is injected to relax the prisoner's muscles. This paralyzes the muscles, rendering the death row inability to breathe. In this state, potassium chloride is injected last. This stops the heart contraction of the condemned person and stops the heart. In 1977, in Oklahoma, USA, drug injection was devised with the judgment that it was more humane than other execution methods, but the problem is that it sometimes fails. The case of waking up in the middle of execution is a typical failure case of drug injection type. 9th place. Electric chair type. Although the electric chair is not currently widely used in the United States, it was once the predominant method of execution. Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb, also invented the electric chair. In 1890, the first execution was carried out using the electric chair, and 1,600 volts was passed through the electric chair, but when it only passed out and did not die, the voltage was doubled to complete the execution. In the electric chair type, electrodes are installed on the head and feet of the condemned prisoner, and a voltage of 2,000 volts is sent in a short time to damage the central nerve and brain, and then an additional 480 volts is sent to paralyze the organs. However, many states in the United States choose drug injection as the death penalty because the electric chair is cruel. 8th place. The punishment of being eaten. The death penalty was a common form of death in ancient Rome. Bringing lions, tigers, bears, crocodiles, and even large snakes to eat death row inmates. In Rome, lions were mainly used for executions. In fact, this method of execution was invented in the fight between beasts of prey and gladiators. However, unlike gladiators, death row inmates are unarmed, and many people watched and enjoyed the scene of death row inmates being eaten at the Colosseum. It was a method used a lot in ancient Rome to persecute Christians. 7th place. Elephant type. It's a very simple execution method. In ancient Persia, elephants were used to execute death sentences. With the head of the condemned man on a pedestal, a trained elephant steps on the condemned man's head with his huge feet. This could have killed death row inmates 100% of the time. Of course, it is because the heads of death row inmates are not strong enough to withstand the huge body and weight of elephants. In fact, this method was very simple and cost little, so it was the most common execution method in Persia at the time. 6th place. Body penetrating. The body penetration type is to pierce the condemned person's body with a long object, resulting in death. Body penetration was used from ancient times to 17th century Sweden. First, the condemned person is tortured in a gathering place, and then a stake is driven into the condemned person's anus or mouth. This stake has a blunt end, and as the death row victim's weight is affected by gravity, the death row victim's body gradually goes down and the stake slowly digs into the body. The more the prisoner moves because of the pain, the more it penetrates, and the organs inside the body continue to penetrate. Circumstances are different for each death row inmate, but it usually takes about 2 days for death to occur. A pain that cannot be expressed in words. 5th place. Scaphism. In ancient Persia, there was a method of capital punishment called scaphism. First, honey is applied to the body of the condemned prisoner, and the condemned prisoner is placed in a square wooden box. The body of the condemned man is contained in the wooden box, but the head, hands, and feet of the condemned man are exposed outside the wooden box. Afterwards, the death row inmates are fed foods that induce diarrhea and cause diarrhea. Then, the wooden box that went into the death row is placed in a place where there are many insects. Then, not only pests, but also parasites lay eggs on the body of the condemned and eat the body of the condemned. This causes death row inmates to die of dehydration, shock and starvation. For a period of 2 weeks or so, the death row inmate would suffer and lose his life. Fourth place. Punishment by putting prisoners in hot water or oil. Death row inmates sentenced to this death penalty will suffer greatly. It is a method of execution by immersing the condemned inmate in boiling water or oil. This method of capital punishment has also been practiced, mainly in East Asia. In Korea, it was not actually killed by putting it in boiling water, but was executed only by entering and exiting a cauldron placed formally. It was humane, but the middle and upper classes were sentenced to this death penalty method, and when they entered and came out of the cauldron, people pretended not to know of his existence, and the punishment continued. Third place. Punishment of tearing the body with words. It is also a method of use practiced in East Asia a long time ago. In this method of execution, the arms and legs of the executed person are tied with ropes to the ox or horse to make them taut, and then the ox or horse goes in their respective directions, and the condemned person writhes in pain that gradually gets worse, until his body is torn to pieces. When this happens, the arms and legs of the condemned man are torn, and the death row inmate dies. Similarly, in the Middle Ages in Europe, there is a record of execution using a pulley instead of a horse or oxen. Second place. Punishment by being put in an iron bowl. It is a form of capital punishment practiced in ancient Greece. After inserting the condemned inmate into a huge, empty model of an iron bowl, a fire is lit under the bowl's belly to cook the condemned inmate. It can be seen as one of the fire types in a big way. The death row inmate must have been very painful because it slowly heated up with the fear of being confined in a small space. This results in respiratory failure, burns, and eventually death. Even more brutally, it is said that when the death row inmate howls or screams in pain, it is turned into a low-pitched bull roar through an internal coffin. First place. Punishment by cutting out flesh. Cutting flesh is a method of execution practiced in China, and it is said to have been practiced until the Qing dynasty, late 1800s. First, the condemned man is tied to a pole so that he cannot move, and then a cloth is stuffed into his mouth to keep him from committing suicide by biting his tongue in excruciating pain. And then, little by little, the flesh of the death row is cut away. To prevent excessive bleeding, bleeding was stopped in the middle of the execution and opium was fed. It is said that about 3,000 to 4,000 cuts were made for one death row inmate. If a death row inmate died without 1,000 cuts done, the bailiff who executed it was also punished. Well, today we looked at 10 of the most brutal and unique execution methods. As you can see, I think these methods are too cruel and painful to imagine. I hope the viewers who watch the video will never sin and live rightly. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and like it, and I will come back with a more fun and informative video. Thank you.